I have a confession to make. You see, I've got this big shelf of fantasy and sci-fi books, and I've been reviewing fantasy and sci-fi on this channel for the last couple of months. And I haven't been doing my due diligence. You see, I haven't really read The Lord of the Rings until just recently, and I just finished it for basically the first time. Now, put your pitchforks down. Let me explain. When I was 11, 12, there were a couple of books that were really impactful and were really formative for me. And they're the kind of books that definitely made me a reader. And those two books were Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, and The Hobbit. The Hobbit very well might be my favorite book of all time. I have read that book so many times. I love it with all of my heart and soul. And when I was 12, The Hobbit just blew me away, and I loved it so much, and I reread it so many times. And obviously, I also grew up with the Peter Jackson trilogy of movies for Lord of the Rings. So I was naturally super excited to jump into the Lord of the Rings books after I read The Hobbit for the first time. And unfortunately, I think as a 12-year-old, I was just too young to really understand and really appreciate the Lord of the Rings books. I read, I think, the first five books, like up until halfway through Return of the King, if I remember correctly. But by the time I got to Return of the King, I'm going to be honest with you, I was pretty much skimming the books and I was not digesting any of the words. And I was just kind of like blazing through them out of a sense of obligation to get through them. And I pretty much hated them and I didn't like them at all. And I found them overly long and overly boring and describing things I didn't care about. And yada, I was comparing to the movies, I was comparing them to the Hobbit book. I didn't like it. So I put it down and I didn't finish it. And for years, I was told my friends about how much I hated the books and how much I didn't like them. And, the past couple of years, as I've been reading more, I've had this nagging urge to go back and reread The Lord of the Rings and give it a second chance because I kind of had the suspicion that I was probably just too young to get it and I needed to go back and correct this error on my part and reread them. And so that's what I did this year. I finally read The Lord of the Rings, and I'm going to say it's for the first time. I know I kind of read two and a half of the books, but I'm not going to count those books because I don't really think I was paying attention. What's really funny is I'm framing this as a review kind of for Lord of the Rings, but to be honest, unlike a lot of these other books that I've reviewed so far on this channel, the Lord of the Rings is a book I can pretty much say is incredible and awesome, and I loved it so much this time around. And it is, an incredible work of fantasy and literature. And to be honest, the thing that I'm struggling with is I couldn't tell you why I think it's good. As I was reading these books and as I was enjoying them so much, I kept trying to figure out why do I like it now and what is even good about it? Because as I was reading it, I was actively thinking, I feel like I shouldn't like this, but I do. I feel like I shouldn't be captivated by this, but I am. So much of the Lord of the Rings books, what's fascinating to me is the things that I hated so much before, the overly long descriptions of the routes that the characters were taking on their journey, and the songs and the extensive lore and talks of history, which were so boring. All that stuff I loved so much the second time. And I don't know why, because normally I don't like overly long descriptions of scenery. And trust me, you know every step of the journey from beginning to end in this book. Tolkien will describe every ditch and gully and shrub and bush that the characters are passing on their way to Mordor. And for some reason, it's compelling and it's great. And I loved it. And I don't know why. The characters that I did not like when I read them the first time, I thought they were boring and flat and dull and not as fun as the characters in The Hobbit. I loved the characters this time around. I loved Aragorn and Frodo and Legolas and Gimli. All these characters were so, I felt like they were richer and more compelling and more thought out. And yet, as I was thinking about it, and I was like, but also as I'm reading it, these characters feel like I feel like I should think that they're flat and boring and dull, but I don't. There's not the kind of they're not the kind of characters that are fleshed out like you see in a lot of modern characters in modern fantasy books, and yet they feel more richer and more in depth than the characters say in the Peter Jackson movie trilogy. And I don't think I tell you why, which is horrifying for me because it means that I'm bad at reviewing books apparently because I couldn't tell you why this is good. I think I'd have to reread this book two or three more times to really nail why I think I like this, but I'm not sure. All I can say is the purpose of this video that I really wanted to say is I basically wanted to, say that I was wrong about Lord of the Rings. It's really good. The story is incredible. It's inspiring. It's heart pounding, and it's very emotionally moving. I definitely was close to shedding a tear near the end of the book when Frodo is leaving to go to the Grey Havens. And yet there are so many parts of it that I couldn't tell you why it's so good. I couldn't tell you why the descriptions of the travel are so engrossing. I couldn't tell you why I liked the song so much this time around. I couldn't tell you why I was totally down with Tom Bombadil this time and not before. I don't know what about it. Is it just because I'm older and more mature and I appreciate things like history and nature and themes that have to do with, nature versus modernity more? I'm not sure. I don't know what it is. But I can tell you that I found the story compelling. I found the language that's used very, not just descriptive, but very, it inspires the imagination. It evoked feelings within me. It was very beautiful prose that I don't normally think about too much. And I found myself just being deeply engrossed in these books. And maybe I'll have to spend the rest of my life figuring this out. But I mean, yeah, I was wrong. Lord of the Rings is great. My 12-year-old self was stupid. Maybe I was just too young to get it. And what's really strange about this book is I don't really know why. I don't really know why, because I feel like I shouldn't like it. Like, I feel like I shouldn't be down with the way this is written, but I am. It just pulls you in. As my first official read of this book, I don't quite know what makes this work. I don't know quite what makes this special, but I can tell you that there is something there that is compelling and inspiring and emotionally moving and beautiful. And I loved every second of it. I thought it was great. And I can't wait to read The Lord of the Rings for many more years to come. So I'm going to cut the video off here. I know this is a very short video compared to, the stuff that I've done. Like, how could I do a 35-minute review on the Revenge of the Sith novel and not on Lord of the Rings of all things? But to be honest, I just don't think I'm qualified. I'm not a Tolkien scholar, okay? I haven't spent my life studying these books. I've only read it one time. And, I kind of want to leave it there and say, look, I was wrong. Lord of the Rings is great. If you're like me and you doubted Lord of the Rings after being grown up on the movies, I think you should give these books a second chance. You may be like me, and on this first read, you may not know exactly what it is that makes these books so special, but these books are very special, and they're very good, and I'm very glad that I gave it a second chance, and maybe you should too.